Thank you everybody for being here today for Fyne Conf 2023. It is fantastic to be in a room with lots of folk excited to be talking about this technology, with contributors who've been part of the project and people who've just learned about it for the first time today. We have a packed installment for everybody to be watching. And it's even bigger than ever before. Not only have we got more speakers, but I believe the number of people watching us from remotely is about 3 times the number that we had last year. I'm very excited to be back with a great selection of speakers from around the community. A lot of people have put a lot of effort into recording, writing these presentations, and I've had the great joy of being able to segue with a little bit of information in between them. But just to get started, I wanted to have a quick reminder of really why we are all here. Fyne, the project, the graphical toolkit, is here so that it's going to be easier to build applications that just work anywhere. We can code applications, have them run on any device without any libraries or setups. So easier for developers, easier for users. Overall, just a great experience. Something that can leverage modern languages and techniques and essentially lower the barrier of entry for absolutely anybody to get into application development for graphical user interfaces. As a benefit, we can make stuff that looks really great by default, and thanks to Go and building something on a more recent code base, we are able to leverage good engineering principles, promote best practices, and help people realize coding's not that difficult. And just because you don't understand how it's put together and your phone seems like a complicated thing, it doesn't need to be all that complicated. So to wrap it up, in a quote from our website, Fyne aims to be the best toolkit for easily developing beautiful native graphical applications for desktop, mobile, and beyond. And that beyond continues to improve and expand as we reach new devices, new platforms, and bust through new barriers. So before we get on to people's presentations today, I wanted to take an opportunity to reflect on what's new since our last event. A year ago, Fyne Conf 2020, I think we had just had release 2.4, and there was a lot of excitement about what was coming in 2.3. Well, it has been a bumper set of 9 releases. It's been a very busy year for everybody in the team. We had the 2.3 release and the improvements that came after that, and the 2.4 major release. So many features and 150 new fixes, I believe. This was a lot of work. Particularly contributors that we have in the room, Thilo, Jacob, and Chankan, and everybody who couldn't join us today, who you'll see a lot of. 28% growth in the commit volume on this year since last. And finally, the reveal of the graph there, that big orange number, is demonstrating that we're continuing to see excellent growth in numbers. GitHub stars, 4,500 more than last year, which put us not only past the 20,000 mark, but also the 21 and the 21.5, if that is a thing. We also expanded the community. We have a Matrix server up and running now for people who don't like any of the social channels that we were previously on. And the apps listing site just last week reached 100 open source applications that developers have promoted from the work that they have been doing. And we also opened up an add-ons site alongside that apps site for people contributing widgets, components, or other reusable elements that people can put into their own applications. And the FyneX repository, which was opened up just before the previous conference, if I remember correctly, has been growing really well. There's some excellent widgets that have been added to that, as well as layouts and other helpers that just take some of the load off what could be repetitive work in your project. And some of those are starting to flow upstream into the main toolkit as well. And we'll hear about some of those later today. So for the major releases, what are the highlights? 2.3, which was towards the end of last year, we had a great new theme update. It was refreshed with one of the designers that's on the project, helping us to feel just a little nicer by default, we added the cloud synchronization and storage APIs as well, which was explored in the workshops this morning to see how, with just one line of additional code, we can take an application that has data locally to share it amongst all of the devices that somebody might have signed in on. We had improved text handling. We've been very grateful to the hard work of other toolkits around, particularly people working in Geo and the text space. In the GoText project, that massively improved what was possible in our own work, so they've put a lot of effort in. And we also put work into things around the application. The menu icons particularly meant that we felt a little bit more at home, particularly on native systems where a richer menu experience was expected. We added more types of button importance, which I'll come back to, and image support into the rich text. 2.4, another UI polish, but this time facilitated by a member of the community who contributed rounded corners, which had been requested for a long time. And it wasn't until it landed in the project we realized just what a difference it can make, taking the sharp edges off buttons, and that's looking fantastic. We added emoji inline in text, so we can now bring another of those expected features to all of our applications. Table headers, layout debugging, I'll also come back to. And window drop handling was added, and so many more features, and we'll hopefully highlight just a couple coming here. There you go, lovely button importance levels in a Fyne demo version from 2.3. That's how it's looking. And I think I talked through all of these in the previous slide. The text handling meant that we could render complex glyphs to screen before, which is a big difference to what we were doing before when it was just kind of Latin characters. We also have a much better rendering pipeline that's come through, and that's going to help us to get into more international areas. Like I said, with a huge amount of thanks to the GoText team. The user preferences and storage can be handled now by the cloud. We have various providers available. Some are open source, perhaps proof of concept, others available commercially, but also you can build your own. You can implement a wrapper to get your API for cloud storage into a Fyne application and hand that off to anybody that wants to use your storage. The rounded corners and emoji in text, I mean, it just makes for such a nicer hello world experience. If there's a little smiley, the buttons are a little friendlier. And if you didn't realize already, that is why we have an emoji smiley in the 2023 in our logo this year. Just a little bit of cheer brought from a simple seeming feature in the toolkit. Like I said, I'll cover table and layout again. Window drop, thanks Jacob for putting that in. You can now receive items from external applications dropped into your window. And amongst other text handling, we added ellipses and more advanced versions of wrapping and truncation, with 35 other features in the most recent release. And that brings us to just a much nicer UI. It feels fresh. We could do more with the text handling. I didn't mention it, but there's an improved way of padding, which seems like a weird thing to call out, but the difference between padding inside and outside widgets had meant that things are better laid out. We tweaked the colors to accommodate this even more popping out of the box, just with great user experience. Like I said, we added table headers, where you can add them to your rows or columns, or both. By default, it is the letter and number format that you see. Dark mode's not coming out particularly well on the projector, but it's highlighted a little in the color there. You can set the labels yourself. You can set your own update header function, much like other parts of using tables. Or you could replace the header functionality completely with your own custom buttons, toggles, whatever it is, by using create header as well as update header. So yeah, great new table features. Layout debugging, I think, has been a real enabler. You can now see how your application is laid out or why it's laid out the way that it is. So if you run your application with tags debug, it's going to render like this, and you can see the reasoning behind how it's set out the way that it is. We found this, I think, useful in the workshop earlier, but you could see on the rendering red borders around each of the widgets, which are labeled for the type of the widget, and the blue border shows the containers that they're within, and with that information in mind, you can see where the space is being taken up, allocated, or left behind. So that's a lot of stuff in the toolkit already, but the community has been absolutely phenomenal this last year. We have lots of new contributors to Fyne. I think I've lost count of the number of pull requests that we've merged in the last few months, where it's been an opportunity to say congratulations on your first pull request to Fyne. So that is really excellent to have more contributions from around the world. But also, and I think sometimes maybe even more difficult or a harder job, is the amazing support that people have given on our community channels across Discord, Slack, Matrix. If you wander into one of these rooms and you have a question or a bug or just can't figure out what's going on in your software or what to look for, there's always somebody there to help out with a helpful suggestion, an experience that they have been through, or maybe even a repository where the solution is spelled out and you can make use of and learn from there. Like I mentioned, the Fynex repository is increasing, great new features in there. But also I think, sort of for the first time, we started to see a lot more of this being used commercially, and the people who are building their business on this technology are being fantastic at giving back as well. And so I've mentioned a couple of items in passing already. Mindpoint Group have done a lot of really cool stuff in-house with the technology, and it was them that needed more advanced functionality in tables, so they sponsored the work for table headers and a few other items that support that. So thanks to them. The Daimium company, although I can't say much about them, I think they're still in stealth mode, had need of some bug fixes and were really helpful to getting us the hardware necessary to make sure that that was possible. And as you'll be well aware, we're solving a lot of cross-platform challenges, which means there's a lot of platform-specific issues, and they were able to help us out hugely there. And also, I want to call out Dentagraphics as well. They have some pretty cool back-end software on machines that nobody's looking at, and they needed to have constant rolling self-update for their software, and they sponsored the creation of the self-update work that's been useful in various different areas. So I think, in summary, at least for me, this really is the most exciting time in Fyne's history to be getting involved. There's more people around, there's so much functionality out there, and it's inspirational to see what people are building, and we'll see a lot more of that across the day. And so that is, I suppose, to say welcome to Fyne Conf 2023. We've already had a really great morning of workshops and discussions. It was great to see people learning for the first time or building on top of their existing knowledge. And I think we even got a pull request on the code that we were working on to show how the functionality that was being created in the session could be improved for a next version. So thanks everybody for contributing there. We have an excellent afternoon of presentations ahead. A lot of people that have contributed weren't able to be here in person, so they're either dialing in remotely or they have pre-recorded. And for a few folk, particularly all the way around the other side of the world, they're not able to join for Q&A sessions, but for most presentations, we have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of each presentation, and we are going to wrap up the day with a session on Jitsi, a platform for community discussion, and hopefully we'll be able to get that synchronized between the room and remote participants. We'll be able to chat through whatever comes to mind, what people want to know or suggest for the toolkit going forward. Please do, for anybody attending remotely, log questions as we go. We'll be trying to monitor our socials, which I think is Slack, Discord, Matrix, what was formerly called Twitter, YouTube, and I knew I'd forget one, Mastodon. So Somebody is looking at all of these places if you want to log a question during the presentation, but we'll try and answer them at the end of each session. It wouldn't be possible to be here today without the sponsorship of a lot of people. I've mentioned the community and the work that's gone into making it possible, but it would be remiss not to mention a thank you to Codebase, who have hosted the venue. Fantastic to be in an event space with you lovely people. They have provided us the facilities, and the wonderful Megan earlier and Sarah this afternoon. So thank you everybody for your help. We have enjoyed some lovely food from Tasty Buns, who are also part of the Codebase community, and that was sponsored by Fyne Labs. I'm going to try and not bore you too much with what everything is being done at Fyne Labs and how we integrate with the community, but it might come up later, and of course we're just here to try and help promote it going forward. That, I believe, is our welcome to Fyne Conf 2023.